Welcome to the weekly current affairs updation on international relations here at Amrita IAS. This week we are going to discuss India and the United Nations. Okay, especially we are looking into India and the United Nations Security Council UNSC. India has recently launched a pitch for its re-election under the United Nations Security Council non-permanent seat. So before going into what the United Nations SC is, how India is going to pitch itself towards a non-permanent seat, let's try and understand what the UN is, what are the organs of the UN. So initially, we can see that there are 6 principal organs of the UN. Again, you have to know this principles organs because questions can come, especially for prelims. It can even be asked for a mains because again, the syllabus explicitly mentions United Nations as an important topic. So from a prelims point of view and even from a mains point of view, this is important. The 6 principal organs. You can see this screenshot is directly taken from the United Nations website. So this would be enough for you to understand what is the structure of UN. Okay. So the principal organs, first one is UN General Assembly, the UNGA. Then there is the United Nations Security Council, the UNSC. The United Nations Economic and Social Council, which is often called the 𝐂𝐿. Then there is the United Nations Secretariat, just like any government, there is a secretariat. Then there is the 𝐈𝐧𝐭𝐽, International Court of Justice, and then there is a Trusteeship Council, which is a council that is responsible for the trusteeship of countries which are in a transition towards democracy, which are in a transition after a government has fallen, etc. Now this thing has not been active since 1994. Okay, so there are 6 principal organs and the 5 are the most important ones. Again, you have to know it: UNGA, UNSC, the 𝐂𝐿, the Secretariat, the 𝐈𝐧𝐭𝐽. Okay, and there is also the Trusteeship Council. Again, if you see what are the there are also other organs here. Okay, so you can see there are certain organs which are known as related organs. Then there are also specialized agencies. See, these specialized agencies are very important. You might have heard about most of these ones. The FAO, then there is the Civil Aviation Organization, the ICAO, then there is the International Labour Organization, which you might have heard about. Then there is IMF, IMO, ITU, UNESCO, UNIDO, then WHO, WIPO, WMO, World Bank Group, which is the IBRD, IDA and the IFC. So these are all important agencies that you have seen. So these are specialized agencies of the UN. That means that these are actually not subsidiaries of the UN, but are in a treaty agreement with the UN. So these work independently, but they kind of have a mutual obligation towards the UN based on some agreements which it has arrived with the UN. Okay, so these are certain important specialized agencies. Now there are also other agencies which are called the related agencies. So these agencies are not really part of the executive board of UN. Okay, so you can see there are organizations like the WTO, which is the most famous one in this. Then there is the ICC, International Criminal Court. Again, these are all optional. You have to know that being a member of UN does not necessarily mean that you have to be a member of either of the related organization or the specialized organization. You can exit it because these work independent of the UN. So the principles of organs of the UN are the important organs, and these principal organs, they have some kind of agreement with the other organizations, and UN, especially the Secretariat, they work very closely with these specialized organs. So the specialized, so you can see the General Assembly has the subsidiary organs, the intergovernmental and expert bodies, funds and programs like the UNDP, UNEP, UN Habitat. So all these important developmental related funds are actually working under the UNGA. Then there is the research and training. You might have heard about United Nations Institute for Training and Research. That is probably the only thing that you might have heard about in a common newspaper article or something. Then there are other entities, UNCTAD, Conference on Trade and Development. So these are some of the, so you can see the common pattern for the subsidiary organs that are working under UNGA, which are all more of a developmental organizations formed for a developmental point of view. Okay, then you can see the United Nations Security Council. You can see Counter-Terrorism Committee, International Residual Mechanism for Criminal Tribunals, Military Staff Committee, Standing Committee and Ad hoc Committees on Sanctions, and then Peacekeeping Operations, etc. So you can see the UNSC, they deal with the security related aspects, the policing related aspects, the military related aspects. Okay, so UNGA, the place, again, you might have some ideas. UNGA is the place where all the countries of the UN are actually members of. So they generally deal with developmental related activities, habitat, sustainability related activities, etc. And the UNSC, they specializes in security matters. Then there is the 𝐂𝐿, again, which are dealing with financial issues and other economic related activities. And again, here also the developmental activities are very much closely related to the 𝐂𝐿. Then there is the 𝐈𝐧𝐭. 𝐈𝐧𝐭 deals with any kind of criminal proceedings against nations. Okay, so again you can see there is this ICC, International Criminal Court, which is a organization which has been formed under the Rome Statute. Say for example, this is not an organization of the UN. This has some kind of relationship with the UN. At the same time, this is not a core organization of the UN. So under the Rome Statute, ICC has been formed, but note it, India is not part of ICC. The United States is not part of the ICC. 𝐈𝐧𝐭 is an important principal organ of the UN, and 𝐈𝐧𝐭 every member country is a part of. So 𝐈𝐧𝐭, the difference between ICC and the 𝐈𝐧𝐭 is that ICC has does criminal proceedings, war crimes against individuals. Okay, so if a country, say for example, it has been argued that US military generals, they might have conducted some war crimes in Afghanistan when the US occupied Afghanistan. So if Afghanistan or any other country is to go for adjudication against these actors, then they have to go to the ICC. Now if Afghanistan or any other country wants to sue the US for doing some kind of illegal activities in Afghanistan, then they can go to the 𝐈𝐧𝐭. So if they are suing a country, they go to the 𝐈𝐧𝐭, and if you are suing a criminal or a person, they are going to go to the ICC. But the problem is that many of the countries are not part of the ICC. So for example, you can see Vladimir Putin is a person who has been sanctioned by the ICC. So the member countries of ICC, they will not be allowing Putin to land on their soil. So for example, when Putin was to attend the BRICS summit in Brazil, he could not come to Brazil because Brazil, because of its membership with the ICC, was supposed to arrest him. So Putin did not come to the BRICS meeting in Brazil. So remember this. But anyway, have a brief understanding. You have the UNGA, where all the countries are part of it. Then the UNSC, which is a specialized group of countries which are dealing with security related aspects. Okay, and today we are going to deal with the UNSC, and India is trying to become a non-permanent member. So we try to understand what is a permanent member and what is a non-permanent member. So before going for that, let's understand the functions of UNSC. Under the United Nations Charter, the functions and powers of the Security Council are. So again, I have told you these are broadly security related aspects, broadly military related aspects. To maintain international peace and security in accordance with the principles and purpose of UN, investigate any dispute or situation which might lead to international friction, make terms of adjustment in case of any disputes, regulate armaments, then determine the existence of a threat to peace or act of aggression against any country in the world, then call on members to apply economic sanctions and other measures. Again, see this, even if the UNGA passes a resolution, it is the UNSC that has to call the other countries to apply sanctions against any country or against any aggressor that is creating international security crisis. Take military actions against an aggressor. So you can see UN task force being formed against aggressors. Then recommended the admission of new members, trusteeship functions of the UN in strategic areas. So for example, say the UNSC reaches an agreement that they need to make sure that the Strait of Hormuz is safe for trade, then the UN can actually launch a task force under the UNSC itself to make sure that these strategic areas are actually open for trade, these strategic areas are peaceful, these strategic areas are stable. Then there is also UNSC has also big roles in the appointment of Secretary General and the election of justice to the 𝐈𝐧𝐭. So again, these are the functions. So you can see these are the core functions. These are the functions that you could identify with the hard powers of the UN. Okay, so the hard powers, the coercive powers of the UN, this would be strictly lying with the UNSC. So every country, every important country that would want to have a say in the global politics, then they would have to be a member of the UNSC. So let's try to understand what is happening and what is it about. So you can see UNSC really has 15 members. Okay, and this 15 members, they are classified into two. The first one is the permanent members and the second one is the non-permanent members. If you go back to the formation of UN was formed in 1945, and at that time the victors of World War II, it was a period when World War II was just over. So the victors of the World War II, they came together and then they said that we will be forming an international forum where the countries can actually discuss any kind of issues that they have with each other, and in that forum, without any kind of conflict, we will try to solve much of the issues. See, this thing had been done already. This thing had been tried by Woodrow Wilson and the League of Nations after the World War I. But the issue was that here the countries, say for example, the Japanese, they raided and they occupied Manchuria in 1939. Now, when countries were not happy, when they started bringing resolutions against Japan's actions on China, Japan simply exited the organization. And similarly, many of the important countries actually exited League of Nations, and that never really worked out. So the fundamental idea was that if all the major powers in the world are in a situation where if any kind of decisions have to be made in the UN, they have to be concurrent to that decision. Without the concurrence of the major powers, that decision should not be taken. That meant that the UN is going to continue despite the negativity that, or the takeaway that there could be some deadlocks because of this country not agreeing. So the 5 permanent members are actually China, France, Russia. Russia actually inherited that from the USSR after its dissolution in 1991. Then there was United Kingdom and United States. So these 5 victors of the World War, they were made the permanent members. So they will be continuing in perpetuity as the members of the UNSC. They will also have something known as a veto power. That is, if any decision is against them or something that they do not want it to happen, then they can actually cast their veto power and that resolution will not be passed. Okay, so that is the veto power and the permanent membership. Now the UNSC also has 10 non-permanent members which are selected for 2 years. Okay, and every year 5 of them. So we have 10 members being elected for 2 years each, and 5 of them retires every alternate years. Okay, so first year 5 members retire and another new 5 members are actually brought in through election. Next year another 5 members and new 5 members comes in. So every year 5 members retires and new 5 members come in. So you can see the current members. Bahrain, again this is given in alphabetic order. Bahrain, Colombia, DRC, the Democratic Republic of Congo, Denmark, Greece, Latvia, Liberia, Pakistan, Panama and Somalia. So in that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. See, 5 of them actually are going to retire in 2026, and the rest of the other 5 members, they are going to retire in 2027. And the chairmanship of the UNSC, it rotates between the countries in alphabetic order every month. Okay, so I am not sure. I think it's Panama this at this point. I haven't checked it. So if it is Panama this time, who is the chairman, then it is going to be Somalia who is going to be the chairman next time, and next month. After that, it is going to be Bahrain, and it follows this alphabetic order. Okay, so this is how the UNSC works. These are how the members, the permanent members and the semi-permanent members are actually working within the UN. So India is actually seeking to be one among these 10 semi-permanent members. Now, what is India's campaign? India recently launched its campaign to serve the 2-year term, that is between 2028 and 29. So that is 2028-29. This is calendar year. This is how the UN works. So you should know that the elections are going to take place in 2027. So we are kind of launching a 1-year campaign so that India is actually elected to that position. See, if elected, then India, it is going to be India's 9th time at the UNSC as a non-permanent member. So India had previously 8 stints at the UN. Let's see, 1950. 1967, 68, 72, 73, 77, 78, 84, 85, 91, 92 and 2011, 12 and 2021, 22. So there were 8 times when India were elected to this non-permanent seat before. Okay, so this is again a prelims question that can be asked. How many times India has been previously elected to the UNSC non-permanent seat? Now you also just for as a knowledge, know this: India has been defeated 2 times in its election for the UNSC non-permanent seat. First one happened in 1976 when under Indira Gandhi we had this emergency going on. Our democratic credentials were pretty bad. Then during the 1971 war, we had a war with Pakistan. Pakistan got split into Bangladesh and the Pakistan that we see right now. So the OIC, the Organization of Islamic Countries, they would not have been in a very good terms with India. So they have around 52 votes in the UN, and therefore their support for the Pakistan at that time ultimately led to Pakistan's victory at that period. Then the second time that we lost was 1996 to Japan. Okay, so 1976 we lost to Pakistan, and 1976 we lost to, sorry, I think it was 1974 we lost to Pakistan, and 1996 that we lost to Japan. Japan was a very powerful country, a prominent contributor of funds, technology, etc. to the UN, and Japan had this big support of the developed countries at that time. So it was at this time period that we understood that, see, if India is to stand for this election, rather than just taking it for granted that the developing countries, the South, global South is going to vote for India, India should probably have a concentrated campaign so that India would be voted for sure. Okay, so India has been following that, and since then, say for example, during the stint of 2011-12, India had almost 187 votes out of the 192 votes that were maximum possible in the UN. So that is, India is kind of unanimously elected. Okay, so India's sustained campaign has always borne fruit. So we are doing this for the election which is going to be held on June 2027. The other contestant for the one seat from Asia is Tajikistan. So we again, this is based on regional representation. We will see that in the next slide. So we have a competition which is Tajikistan. Say for example, in 2011-12 also we had this competition from the Kazakhstan. But India actually was having a very good relationship with Kazakhstan, and India had negotiations with Kazakhstan, and Kazakhstan actually moved out from the election, or moved out from the campaign, allowing India to be elected with such a majority. So again, we already know about the 10 non-permanent seats. Let's see how this thing is working. Candidates need 2/3 majority vote of members present and voting via secret ballot. This is important. This is secret ballot, and we need 2/3 majority. That is, until the 2/3 majority is being counted, the election is going to go on. Okay, so there might be multiple rounds of election. Okay, and it is secret ballot. That is also important because, say for example, in the last election, Germany thought that they had significant support, but it has been seen that because of Germany's support for Israel, and because of the Israel-Iran war, and because, again, I told you, OIC has a significant proportion of representation in the UN, and OIC together as a bloc, they decided that Germany should be boycotted, and therefore they did not vote for Germany, and Germany actually lost a significant vote last time. Again, because it is a secret ballot, we cannot know how many people actually voted for Germany, how many did not vote for Germany. So again, this is important, and India has to make sure that India would be elected if it stands for the election. So again, this is in contradiction with the other elections which is happening in the UNGA, where it is publicly displayed what stand that specific country has actually voted for. Okay, so recently you might have seen resolutions against Israel, where certain countries would be abstaining, certain countries would be voting against it, certain countries will be voting supporting it, and you will have a big chart given by the UN itself showing how many people have voted for it, voted against it, and has abstained. So that is open voting system that the UNGA follows, but the election to UNSC, it follows a secret ballot system. Now again, as we can see, India is actually campaigning for that one seat where Tajikistan is actually standing. So it is regional representation. There is one each. There are 2 seats from Asia, and 1 seat is going to be vacated in the next year. So let's see how the non-permanent seats are distributed. 3 from Africa, 1 from Eastern Europe, 2 each from Asia, Latin America, and Western Europe and other countries. See, these other countries actually includes Israel, etc. Then Pakistan is presently a member of the UNSC from Asia, having joined in 2025-26, while Bahrain's tenure expires in 2027. Kyrgyzstan will replace Pakistan in 2027, which the election has already taken place, and from January 2027 onwards, they are going to replace Pakistan. Now, Bahrain is going to expire its tenure in 2027, and will be seeking to replace Bahrain. Okay, so much of these other things are actually discussed already. The voting process, nomination, regional blocks usually agree internally on endorsements before the formal vote. So again, I told you why India got this 187 votes, because even before the real voting takes place, the countries reach a consensus that who should be the next non-permanent member. So it's almost decided outside the voting place itself. Okay, now again, as if procedure, a secret ballot has been taking place and 2/3 majority is often counted. But you can see, even though some countries are actually going to say that they are going to vote for certain countries, but there are different things at play right now. This is diplomacy, this is international affairs that we are talking about. So countries may not be voting as they say when they reach the secret ballot. So we can see some changes that sometimes happen. But India generally doesn't have this kind of issue. There are few countries that actually oppose India in that sense. Most of the countries are actually supporting India's candidature. Okay. Now, so this is all about the UNSC elections. But this also raises a fundamental question, like why non-permanent membership? You can see that the permanent members, they have this perpetual membership, they have this veto system. So doesn't this have some kind of discrimination within the UN itself? Okay, so there has been called for UNSC reforms for a long time. So like fundamentally we have to see why this reform process is needed and what are the claims that India has been putting forward for it to be a permanent member in the UN. So you can see that, so this is a question that you can prepare for the mains. You can also expect this question. It is an outdated structure. UNSC structure reflects the 1945 post World War II power order, not today's geopolitical reality. So for example, Germany was a country that was defeated during the World War II. Now, if you see Germany is one country that really deserves to be there because of its significant contribution to the UN, and because it's a very powerful country, maybe the most powerful country in Europe at this point, if you are not considering Russia, of course. So again, this needs to be there. So for example, India is the largest democracy. India represents almost 1/6 of the global population. So doesn't India seek to be there at the high tables where the global decisions have been made? So that is also a question. Then global south underrepresentation. See, Africa, Latin America and much of Asia. See, the Asian representation is actually China. So you cannot really say that Asia has been properly represented there, and they lack adequate representation despite many UNSC issues directly concerning these regions. See, if you see the history of UNSC resolutions and if you see the times when UNSC has been actually intervening in regional conflicts, you can see it is often in these places, Africa, Latin America and Asia, where the UNSC has intervened. But at the same time, there is very little representation for this region in the UNSC. Then there is also veto problem. The P5 veto can produce deadlocks and inaction, particularly during major conflicts and humanitarian crisis. So again, Russia is waging a war against Ukraine, and any kind of resolution against Russia is going to veto it. Probably China is also going to veto it. Now Israel is having a war with Iran, and I shouldn't simply say it's Israel or not. The US also is there backing it. So any kind of resolution against this war, US is probably going to veto it. There are other countries, probably UK is going to stand with the US. They are also continuously vetoing any kind of resolution. So that means that UN is actually unable to actually intervene in any of the real conflicts where the P5 is actually having a stake. So that is also a big problem. Then there are new and emerging threats. Now, up until this time, we have been talking about conventional kinetic threats, the war between two countries. But we also have to consider new threats like terrorism, cyber warfare, climate-led insecurity. So, for example, climate-led migration, pandemics, AI, and transnational crimes. Okay, so these are places, or these are new threats that require more countries to be part of, that require a more wider acceptance for the resolutions being taken in UNSC. So therefore, some kind of reform, be it in representation, be it in the activities that the UNSC do, and be it in the way in which the UNSC and the UNGA has a relationship, there should be a consensus where the countries, the whole board of countries present in the UN, they have this trust, they have this stake where their stand can be actually conveyed. Okay, then it will significantly improve the credibility of UN as an international or the closest thing that we have to an international government. Okay. Next, let's see India's claims. Most of the things, it's very simple. You probably know India is the world's largest population. That's almost 1/6 of the global population. It is the largest democracy in the world. Again, doesn't the largest most populous country in the world, largest democracy in the country in the world, should be represented in the UNSC or represented at the global high tables? That's one simple question. Then India is a major and rising economic power. The economic structure of India, the contribution of India to UN peacekeeping. India has actually contributed almost 3 lakh peacekeepers, okay, to the UN peacekeeping operations, over 50 missions. 50 plus missions rather. Okay, so a country that has been consistently supplying its troops to peacekeeping operations and consistently being praised for its activities on ground. So doesn't it has shown that it has shown enough contributions? Hasn't it given its share to the UN? That is also a question. India has been a responsible power, especially a responsible nuclear power, even while not signing the NPT. Then there is a strategic and geopolitical significance of India, especially in the context of the Indo-Pacific. Say for example, rather than compared to Chinese one-sided aggression, India is a country that is or that has been functioning based on the rules-based order. Okay, so that is also important. Then India's civilization and cultural diversity. India is one of the ancient civilizations. India present and knowledge that is very much important for the human civilization. So again, India does deserve to be at that point, and there is a broad international support for India's candidature. So India has been trying that through the G4. The group of 4, India, Japan, Brazil and Germany. But there is also another group, that is the United for Consensus, or the Kofi Club, that has been trying to create counter movements against this G4 representation. Okay, so this thing happened. Probably you can read more about India's request for changes, etc. But if you see from the whole, the most credible plan that is there towards the UNSC reforms has been the Kofi Annan plan. Kofi Annan actually suggested 2 models, the model A and model B. So the model A involves the increasing of permanent seats. So add 6 new permanent members without the veto power. This is very important. See, for example, if they were to give the veto power to the 2 members, then obviously any kind of resolutions made to increase the representation in UNSC, the permanent 5 countries, that the P5 countries, are going to again veto it. So P5 countries wouldn't never allow their veto to be diluted. So Kofi Annan has also been practical in the sense that he has suggested 2 models. At the same time, in both of these 2 models, he does not dilute the veto of the P5 members. Okay, so 6 new permanent members without veto powers. Allocate these seats, 2 for Africa, 2 for Asia, 1 for Europe and 1 for the Americas. Add 3 new non-permanent seats, bringing a total size to 24. So you can see that the UNSC representation is going to be more balanced regionally, and it is going to see that there are consistent representation from across the world. Next one is the model B with semi-permanent seats. No permanent seats have been envisaged in here. A new tier of 8 semi-permanent members elected for a 4-year renewable terms. That is also significantly important, because again, currently we have 2-year terms which are non-renewable. So you have to have a break before standing for the elections again. So this is the second thing that he has suggested, or second plan he has suggested. It allocates these seats across major regional areas: Africa, Asia, Europe and the Americas. Adds 1 new 2-year non-permanent and non-renewable seat also, along with the present 10+5 system. So again, Kofi Annan, he has not only suggested a change in the allocation or representation in the UNSC. Kofi Annan has also suggested that the UNSC should move from its security related functions alone, adding certain developmental functions also. Okay, so this is what Kofi Annan has been suggesting. Say UNSC, we need to envisage the concept of security to a more wider concept of human security involving developmental aspects. So this is something that we can look for. See, practically we have to understand that we may call for reforms, we may give our claims, etc. But at the end of the day, we should be realistic that the P5 countries are never going to allow their veto power to be diluted. So we need to look for the more practical solution. We should look for step-by-step changes where we can actually say, for example, look for a model A which Annan has suggested and gain a permanent membership, and slowly through concerted efforts through of like-minded parties, we should look for diluting the veto power, either spreading the veto power across the new members also, or just giving away the fundamental idea of veto power itself to make it more democratic, to make it more representative, so that majority voting would be the parameter for UNSC decisions. So these are something that we need to identify. Anyway, understand these are the things that can be asked for prelims and mains. From a mains point of view, the fundamental questions that can come are on 2 terms. One is UN relevant right now, and what is the relevance of UN? So basically you have to give points. Say for example, why UN is not relevant, 5 points. Why UN is relevant, 5 points. The next one is the need for UNSC reforms or UN reforms. So you say these are the reasons why UN needs to be reformed. These are the challenges for the reforms. And next, lastly, you say these are the things that India has been doing for its share in the UN reforms. So these are the questions that you need to prepare for. From a prelims point of view, learn about the organs of UN, learn about how the UN is working. So you can expect, say, for questions like statement based questions or factual questions like how many times that India has been elected as a non-permanent member to the UNSC. So these can be questions that can be expected. Okay, so do read on UN thoroughly, do understand the portions. Certainly visit your international relations notes and understand what is going on. Okay, so that is all for today's current affairs updation. Thank you.
Amrita IAS Academy.